Good evening. It's just after 12, and I've just been going over the Chuck Norris, stuff. Very sad. I knew when I heard that hospital report that he was gone. I just felt it in the spirit. The other side of me, apart from all the medical stuff and the political stuff, was I basically spent a lifetime in boxing and martial arts, and I can remember like many people who started martial arts, it was back in the 70s, and that was, I was boxing at the time. My father was Queensland state champ. My grandfather was a professional boxing coach, and from 14 years of age, I was training at my grandfather's gym. Then later on, NFC in Townsville, then Reggie Kirkham's gym. Was a sparring partner for most of the current champions. And my best mate is Neil Paddle, who went on to win 3 professional titles in the light middleweight division. In the, I forget, must have been 75, I'd have to look it up, but it's all a blur. I'm 71 this year now. And I remember going to the drive-in, would you believe, and seeing Enter the Dragon. And Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris in that, never forgotten fight in the Rome Coliseum. And I couldn't figure out what Bruce Lee was doing. We used to sort of think that martial arts was BS those days, because, they couldn't do much against boxers, quite frankly. In my town, they couldn't. They were pretty amateurish. And, but then when I saw Bruce Lee and Chuck, I thought, hang on, these blokes have got something. So that took me down the track, thanks to Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee and many other martial arts instructors, actually. That took me down the track where I decided, okay, I'm pretty good with my hands, and now I wanted to learn to use my feet. So, combine the hand and foot scenario. And then I started with Chongchul Ri, which is, he's passed away now, but he was one of the original Koreans that came out to Australia. And then I after about 7 years with Ri, I moved on to, join up with Yun Kyu Yun, who was the chairman of technique worldwide for the ITF. Now, I'm an old school character who most of the Koreans, though, so just like Chuck, as Chuck said in his various videos, that when he was in the Air Force, he, I think he was just doing judo, a bit of kickboxing or whatever they're doing back in the USN. And, he walked past a Tang Sudo, or what they call Taekwondo school, and all he saw was these Koreans' heads, jumping above the roof and the fence, rather. And then later on he went to inquire what they were doing, and of course it was basically the Korean version of karate, or Taekwondo, or Tang Sudo as they call it. And he learnt a lot off the Koreans, and that's why when he came back to the US, he was doing spinning heel kicks, spinning hook kicks, all these sort of kicks that they'd never seen before in the US. So Chuck introduced those sort of kicks back in the US kickboxing era, and he was a pioneer in that area. So, but, the focus was in those days, just to let people know, it's sort of like especially the Koreans, I've trained with Koreans like for 15 years, and it wasn't the fancy stuff they're doing now where, it's more like show pony stuff. These guys, Chuck, Yun Kyu Yun, Chongchul Ri, who was in the, in the Demon Hunter Marines in Korea, these guys were the real deal. And I can remember, even with Chongchul, and I was always the instructor. I got black belts and all this sort of stuff, and I did all that, thousands of hours of training. I love spinning heel kicks, and that become one of my signature kicks. You know, the jump front, jump turning, jump side, jump back. You know, I still got the videos there. I can load them up. At 71, I'm not doing much no jumping kicks these days. But what was I going to say? The mentality of the Koreans and Chuck and these guys at that particular era was one-hit stop techniques. Now, you had to look at Bruce, who was an expert at that, and people go on about Bruce Lee, you know, that he wasn't in the real world, it's just an actor and all the rest of it. But that's a lot of BS. Lee fought the triads in Hong Kong. I mean, I've been to Hong Kong a few times as well. He fought in the streets, and a lot of these characters criticising Lee, or even for that matter, I don't think many criticise Chuck, but they've never been in the real world. You know, Chuck has been in the real world. He's in the Air Force in Korea, based there. Yun was a soldier there at the time. And I'll just tell you this story about Grandmaster Yun. And, you know, I give credit where credit's due. I've had my differences with the various Korean masters over the years. But this is a story that gives you an idea of what the Koreans were like those days, and the instructors I had, what they were like. And they basically believed in what I call military style Taekwondo, military style. So they would train for sudden impact. They weren't training for competitions, none of them. Even Chong Chul, and I've been to a lot of restaurants with Chong Chul. I've watched him challenge people, all this sort of stuff. They don't muck around. If you challenge them, you challenge them to the death, basically. And I've seen it. Not someone killing someone, but to that point, they're not playing games. You want to challenge them? I'll take you out. Simple as that. So the mentality of, you know, the likes of Chong Chul, I believe Chuck really, even though he was doing the, you know, the tournaments and all this sort of stuff. But the reality was, when they're in the real world, it's just one or two techniques, and they're pretty sharp and deadly in the right spot. And I'll just tell you this little story, and it's about young Kyun. Anyway, he was in the Korean Army, all of them. They're all conscripted, so they're all in the Army. And, of course, the Air Force was actually over there at the time. And they had this big training hall in Korea. And there was this American Negro boxer who at that time, thought that all the, you know, Korean stuff was bullshit. And he challenged Yun in front of all his students. And he said, you know, this chippy stuff, or whatever he said, it's just BS, basically. And he challenged Yun. And Yun put one of his students up to sort of spar this bloke. And the student just, you know, moved around and avoided him mainly. And Yun said to me, he was a pretty big guy, this guy, big American, black American, you know. And then this guy came up to Yun and he said, no. He said, I don't want to challenge your students. He said, I want to challenge you. You are the one. He said, I'm going to kill you. This is what he said to Yun. And Yun said, oh, you kill me? Maybe I kill you. And I've seen Yun in action, and, you know, he's like a peace-loving sort of dude, really. You know, he's well into his 80s now. But so what he did, this guy shaped up, and I know that the particular technique. He did two kicks. One, he took the knee, inside knee kick, and the other one, spinning heel kick. So he went bang, bang, two shots, and the spinning heel kick hit the American guy in the temple. Just, fortunately, it was just a bit sort of front here, and it put this almighty split in the side of his face. And Yun remembered saying to me, he just watched this guy fall backwards onto the concrete, and his face had swollen up double the size within seconds. He thought he killed him on the spot. Anyway, into hospital this guy went, and Yun thought, oh God, he's in big trouble now with the Yanks, right? Anyway, the commander at the base called Yuan. This is after, the American soldier didn't die, but he was in a pretty serious state of affairs, and they had to send him back to the USA. Had to be stitched up and all the rest of it. And the American commander called Yuan in after a while, and Yuan thought he was in big trouble. And, of course, the Yanks were the big timers there, of course. And Yuan was a sergeant. So he came into Yuan went into the commander's office. And he said, "Sit down, Yuan." "Yes, sir." He said, "Now," he said, "I've heard the full story." And he said, our soldier challenged you, and you took up the challenge, and it was a fair fight. And he said, "Now, I'm not going to do anything about it from a disciplining point of view." He said, "But what I have instructed, every officer and every soldier in this camp will salute you when they come past you." And so wherever Yuan went, the Yanks would stand to attention and salute him because they knew he was a warrior. So that's a little story from real martial arts. And, often I see, even in the UFC, and they're tough guys and all the rest of it, and they've got rules and they've got, referees and all that sort of stuff. But you rarely see anyone throwing what I call ball of the foot kicks, or even with spinning heel kicks using the back of the heel. They're just using the back of the foot, which is a soft area. And even when they're doing the kicks, like side kicks, or not side kicks, but half turning kicks and stuff like that, it's never with the ball of the foot. When we did all our stuff, it was impact kicks. Like, it was all about breaking something, boards or whatever. It wasn't about just a sloppy kick with the down part of the foot, which has got all your nerve endings in. And if you've ever copped an elbow in the instep of your foot, you can't walk for a week. So I'm blowed if I know why they don't, do the traditional method of kicking with the ball of the foot, spinning keels with the heel of the foot. I've noticed that while I'm looking at UFC and that, they never use the heel. They always use the flat of the foot. In that position, the foot is in a very, very vulnerable position. I know, because I've got a chiropractic degree, so I understand biomechanics back to front and upside down, and where the nerves are and where the nerves hit. And then probably one of the guys that I would say I found very interesting to listen to is Bass Fruden. He sort of knows a few of the intricacies of where to kick and what not to kick and what have you. And even with the shin, there's inside of the shin, terrible spot. You can get damaged a hell of a lot. There's a lot of nuances that kickboxers know. And in certain areas, when I look at how these guys kick sometimes, I think, Jesus, they're bludgeoning people to death where they're not using what I call sniper rifle techniques. Anyway, I'm old school. But in saying that, I've had a lot of real conflicts in the real world, and including defense against shotguns, or you name it. And none of the what I call the competitive stuff I use the full-on, military style stuff, and that's the only stuff that you'll survive with in the real world. You got no referee. It's a fight for survival. Anyway, God bless Chuck Norris. He was a good man. He was a Christian. And, he left a legacy. I had tears in my eyes initially. And, anyway, he'll be up there with Bruce Lee, and they'll be, probably having another retake of Enter the Dragon. So anyway, that's Graham Healy. All these legends are going. It's terrible. I mean, this was all my era, the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. And, you can never, nothing matches that particular era. It was legendary. So God bless Chuck Norris and his family. Amen. Have a great night. Thank you.